Bob Schieffer.
And good morning again. We begin with Congressman Peter Hoekstra, who is with us in the studio here in Washington. Senator Patrick Leahy is in his home state. He's in Burlington, Vermont this morning. Congressman, I will start with you. You're the ranking Republican on the House Intelligence Committee. I want to get your take about the announcement that they will try Sheikh Mohammed in New York, just blocks from Ground Zero. Most Republicans seem to think this is a bad idea. Most of the Democrats seem to think it's a good idea.
And I think most Americans are going to think that this is a bad idea. This is ideology run wild. We're going to go back into New York City, the scene of the tragedy on 9/11. We're now going to rip that wound wide open, and it's going to stay open for what, 2, 3, 4 years as we go through the circus of a trial in New York City.
You think it's going to take 2, 3, or 4 years?
Well, you never know. I mean, that's you can bet that the folks that are going to be tried and their lawyers are going to try to use this opportunity to extend it as long as they can, because this is what they wanted. They wanted center stage, and they're going to want to keep it for as long as they can. They will bring every motion forward that they can that will drag this trial out.
Well, the fact is, he did ask to be brought to New York when he was first arrested, and we all know he has confessed to this. Do you think it will just turn into some sort of a propaganda show?
Well, that will be their objective. Obviously, our Attorney General, our legal system will try to keep it dignified and civil and bring some respect to it. But that's not what KSM is going to try to do. They're going to do everything they can to disrupt it and make it a circus and allow them to use it as a platform to push their ideology.
Well, I guess the answer to the question I'd have, what would you have done? Something has to be done with these people.
I do exactly what the president is doing with some of the other people that they have down in Guantanamo. The president has said for some of these other individuals, we will use military tribunals. And he hasn't really, demonstrated to us as to why some are going to go into New York and be tried there and why others are going to go through military tribunals. He clearly has said military tribunals are an appropriate step to use, but he hasn't said why it's okay for one for another. I would have put him through the military tribunal process. We started that process. They pled guilty. Why won't the president take guilty for an answer and say, now let's go on to the sentencing phase?
Do you believe, is it your basic belief that these terrorists do not deserve a trial in an American court and the benefits that come with that?
Not an American civilian court. I believe that they have certain protections that they would get in a tribunal, but to give them extraordinary protections that you and I have as American citizens, and to give that to KSM, people who have mocked the American system, want to do everything that they can do to destroy it, and now give them those extraordinary protections that we enjoy. Yeah, I think that's a bad decision.
Do you think this puts the people of New York at risk?
I think America is at risk continually from the threat from radical jihadists. We saw it in Fort Hood 10 days ago. To now say that, New York is on the list, I think New York has been on the list ever since 2001. We know that we were attacked in 1993. We know that we were attacked in 2001. I think that al-Qaeda and radical jihadists, if they could attack us again in New York, they would.
They talk now, and there are reports that the administration is now examining various federal prison sites in this country. Illinois is one of them. They were talking a while about perhaps putting them in prisons in Michigan, your home state. How do you feel about that?
Well, the president has never answered the question why. I'm all about problem solving. What problem is the president going to solve by moving these trials to New York or by moving Gitmo prisoners to Michigan, to Illinois, to Colorado? He hasn't outlined what problem he's solving. I don't see the problem of moving them from Gitmo. It's been a great place. We've been able to keep them there safely. There are certain challenges with these prisoners. Why move them into the United States while we are still under the threat from radical jihadists?
I want to turn to the massacre at Fort Hood, because you were one of those in Congress who immediately began pressing the government for answers when they were giving out very little information. Where do you think this thing stands now, Congressman? Are you satisfied with where it's going so far?
No, I think that the government has been too slow in giving us information. There hasn't been enough transparency for members of Congress, for the press, or for the American people. You know, I think that we need to move very, very aggressively and do a full-scale investigation as to who knew what and where. You know, this al-Awlaki guy in Yemen, you know, he's been on our radar screen since 2001, 2002. What evidence there? My sources tell me we had evidence back in 2002 that would have enabled us to prosecute him. Why didn't we prosecute him then? The other thing I want to know is, people want to know who Hassan has been talking to in the Middle East. I want to know who al-Awlaki is talking to in the United States. And have we been, have we been able to capture those communications? I want to know what's going on between the intel community, the Department of Defense, and the FBI. I think we had a lot of information on Hassan, but I'm not sure that we put all of these things in place so that we would have been in a position to perhaps stop what happened at Fort Hood last week.
Do you think the government was timid in questioning him? Because we now know that he was even carrying cards with the phrase SOA. Some people say that's a soldier of Allah. Some say a slave of Allah. Who knows how it's interpreted. But there seem to be so many red flags that were raised here that one group would know about it, another group would know about it, but it never came together and it never set off alarm bells.
Yeah, I think the administration knew by the Friday after the Fort Hood shootings that they had a lot of questions that needed to be answered, that there had been all of these red flags, but that they'd never come together in one place. And I think that's why they've been slow in providing people like yourself and myself with the transparency and the information, because there's going to be a lot of tough questions that need to be asked that I'm not sure that they were prepared to answer.
You have called for an investigation, a congressional investigation. Can Congress investigate this without hampering the investigation by the authorities that's going on?
I hope so. I mean, Senator Lieberman has called for an investigation. I really think we need to do an aggressive investigation. We need to use this opportunity as to what happened in Fort Hood to find out what happened in these tragic circumstances, but to get a better insight to what I think is a real and continuing threat from radical jihadists. I think most Americans aren't aware of how severe this threat really is.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much for
being with
us this morning. I want to turn now to get